Good morning. I, about 15 minutes ago, waiting outside, just finished the season finale of Shameless on Showtime On Demand. So I'm still a little bit completely blown. It's going to take me a couple of seconds. For those who haven't seen it, I'm not going to, I should tell, anyone not seen it yet? Because I totally want to tell you what happened, but I'm not going to. Very cool. Thank you guys for having me. This is fun. Ignore the 2-alarm fire currently raging right across the street. That the smoke you smell, it's not real smoke, and we're all fine. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about the concept of capturing this sort of hyper-connected, completely ADHD customer that we are all trying to get. Essentially because that's the only kind of customer there is anymore. So, how do you get customer loyalty when the customer is doing 47 things at once and there are 54 million ways to try and reach them? So I'm going to tell you some stories about that, and that's pretty much all I do. I'm not going to waste your time with PowerPoints. I believe that if you write a PowerPoint and then you read what you've written, that's not a PowerPoint. That's like closed captioning. And that doesn't do much. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tell some stories. I wasn't supposed to be doing any of this. I was actually in graduate school studying fashion and portrait photography in Santa Barbara, California in the early 90s because it was a spectacular way to meet women. Oh, no, I was on a beach with a camera in Santa Barbara. Do the math. I mean, it was awesome. With 18 credits to go, I lost my financial aid. The government sent me a letter that said, your parents make too much money, we're taking away your financial aid. I sent the government back a letter. Do you know they do make too much money? I wrote this letter to the government. They do make too much money, however, they keep it. And the government did not find that funny, which was interesting. So I moved back to New York. I'm a born and raised New York City kid. And I was hanging out in a, so this is the early 90s, like 94, 95, mid-90s. Raise your hands if you're under 30. Okay, so some of the shit I'm going to talk about today is going to make no sense to you whatsoever. I was hanging out in the mid-90s in my parents' basement in New York City in something called the Melrose Place TV gossip chat room on America Online. The best analogy I can give you is twittering about girls, right? But with Lena Dunham, but instead of, it's not a device. You're actually in front of a screen that's connected to a box on the floor underneath your desk, and that box has a wire coming out of it that connected to something called a modem, M-O-D-E-M. You can find it on Wikipedia, and the modem connected to a phone line, which connected to your phone, which connected by another line to the wall. Because in the 90s, phones primarily connected to walls. We didn't carry them. And you'd type something into this chat room, and then someone would type something. You'd go get a slice of pizza, and you'd come back, someone would have typed something back to you. And this is what we did in the 90s, instead of like dating. So I was hanging out in this chat room, and someone said, my company's trying to build a newsroom, why don't you submit your resume? I said, sure, I have no idea how to do that, but I have this journalism degree from Boston University, so I'm sure I'll be perfect for whatever it is you're trying to do. Sarcasm, I learned that day, does not transfer well on the internet, and 2 weeks later I was being moved down to Virginia to become the founding editor of the America Online newsroom at AOL. So for those who remember AOL, keyword news, right after Welcome You Got Mail, keyword news was us, and we built this newsroom, no idea what we were doing. And it's sort of the same now. We still have no idea what we're doing, but we're getting there. I was so early in the game onto the internet and onto AOL that I had Peter at AOL.com was my email. And all my friends thought I worked for the internet. Like, I went into a big room with the words "the internet" on the door every day, and me and Al Gore, and we just hung out. I could never use Peter at AOL.com because that was when everyone was getting on the internet, and AOL was the internet, and so everyone thought, oh, my friend Peter's on the internet, so he must be Peter at AOL.com. So my inbox was always 500 deep of misdirected emails to other Peters. Every Friday, in the newsroom, we'd crack open a six-pack, and we would project the email box onto the wall, and we'd open up and read all the misdirected. There are some Peters in this world doing some freaky-ass shit, let me tell you. It was pretty crazy. But we had this great time at AOL because we had no idea what we were doing, so we made up the rules as we went along. And Steve Case taught us 2 rules. Steve Case, the CEO of AOL at the time, 2 rules. First rule was that it didn't matter what we were doing, creating content, driving this, doing that. AOL cost $2.95 an hour back then. For those under 30, the internet wasn't always free. It used to be charged hourly. And the internet was, AOL cost $2.95 an hour. Remember dialing up? We had one job. Keep our users online as long as possible, because that generated revenue. And without revenue, there was no job. There was no AOL. That rule is so important today, more so than ever. You know, it's not about fans, followers, likes. That's all BS. It's about generating revenue. And if at the end of the day, everything you're doing and everything you're tracking and every metric you're running isn't designed to help you figure out how to better generate revenue for your business, you're doing it wrong. So we're going to talk about that. And that was the first lesson I learned. The second lesson I learned, Steve Case also taught us, it was right around the time that MSNBC was launching. And AOL, in the newsroom, we were the bomb then, and we were all worried because MSNBC had NBC backing it and Microsoft backing it, and we were going to be destroyed, and they were going to take our 1 million members. And Steve Case came in and said, you know, you're worrying about the wrong thing. Don't worry about the 1 million members. Don't worry about the 1 million people currently on the internet. Worry about the 385 million who come home every night and watch Seinfeld and don't go online. The worry is not that you're going to lose the 1 million members that the whole internet has. The worry is that the 385 million are never going to find out about you. And that's huge because that's marketing. Okay, if you have an audience right now and you have a huge audience out there, the question becomes, how do you get that huge audience without losing the audience you have? So those were two valuable lessons. I left AOL, moved back to New York, was consulting, was doing some work. It was the summer of '98, and there was a small independent film coming out that you probably didn't hear. It didn't do that. It was called Titanic. And everywhere you looked, there were signs, buy Titanic on video, get Titanic on video, buy it here, buy it or it will kill your children. I figured there had to be people that hated that movie as much as I did, so I took my rent money. I had 500 t-shirts printed out. The t-shirts read, "It sank, get over it." I went to Times Square, figured if we could sell 180 shirts, I'd break even. Anything more would be profit I could put towards starting my new PR firm, right? Because it was the dot-com day, everyone was starting a PR firm. I figured it'd take a week. I sold 500 shirts in 6 hours. I came home, leaked the story to USA Today. They ran it on the front page. I sold 10,000 shirts in 2 months out of my apartment. Cleared about 100 grand. My dad was a high school principal of a public school at the time in New York City. I had 10 of his students come over every day and help box up t-shirts and take them. It was like P. Diddy's studio sweatshop after school special. But I learned a fascinating thing during that time. I had never planned on selling shirts. That wasn't a thing I was going to do. I just did it on a whim. And there was no Twitter, there was no Facebook, you couldn't promote yourself. Oh, by the way, I'm supposed to say this, at PeterShankman on Twitter. Feel free to tweet anything I say. If you find it interesting, then I'm flattered, and I think the hashtag is Monetate Summit, so feel free. But I never planned on doing any of that. All I planned on doing was just, creating a shirt and making a few bucks. And I learned this really important lesson. If I did that today, I'd go into Times Square with my t-shirts, and within 30 seconds, some idiot would have grabbed a photo of it, posted it on Instagram, and within 15 minutes, Cafe Press would have 15 rip-offs of my shirt. I was lucky in '98. Cameras and cell phones were two completely different things. Today, that's pretty difficult. Everything you do, brand it. Everything you do for your business as you're building it, as you're running it, whether it's a video, whether it's a tweet, figure out a way to brand it back to you. Because all you got at the end of the day is your brand. Okay? And if you come up with something great and someone else swipes it and they have a bigger audience than you, see ya. Okay? The concept of creating something, posting online, and then having someone else grab it and post it again and getting all the credit, there's actually a name for that. It's called Imgur. Okay, IMGUR, Imgur. Okay, that's what people do. You post something on Imgur, you're like, this is going to get a ton of votes, this is going to be the front page, and it's not, and 5 minutes later, someone else has posted it, and it's there on the front page, and it was yours. So learn that you have to brand everything you do. If you don't brand everything you do, someone else will take it, and you will not get the revenue from it, you will not get the credit for it, your brand will not grow. Brand everything you do. So long story short, I started this PR firm, I sold it, I had a bunch of fun, and then I discovered Help a Reporter Out. I started this thing where I could connect journalists with sources. Anyone use Harrow on a regular basis? Anyone not know what Harrow is? Because it's a free service, and I don't have nothing to do with it anymore. I sold it 4 years ago, but it's probably something you should check out. It's a free newsletter that comes out 3 times a day with queries from journalists all over the world. If you can answer whatever they're looking for, you get quoted in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, Oprah, whatever. Helpareporter.com, I strongly recommend it. It's free. Why the hell wouldn't you want to get quoted in the media? It grows your business. So that's what I did. I sold that. That blew up beyond my wildest dreams. And what I want to talk about for the 35 minutes and 20 seconds I have left is the concept of what I learned from it and how it affects you as business owners, as small businesses, as large businesses, as people who are marketing, people who have to drive customer retention, customer loyalty. Okay? I figured it out. It came down to 4 rules. There are 4 rules I'm going to talk about and what they mean and how they're beneficial to you. The first rule is very simply the concept of transparency. We are in an age now where there is not much separating your website from anyone else's website, your product from anyone else's product, if all they have to do is click and type in a new address. So you only have, the only thing that guarantees your customers will continue to come back and continue to buy from you is if you are creating things they want and making them think that you are the best one to do it. And it starts off with transparency. Back in the 80s, there was a company called Union Carbide. Union Carbide was famous for having an accident in Bhopal, India, in which they released cyanide gas into the atmosphere, and 20,000 people in Bhopal, India were killed within 3 hours. The New York Times headline that ran the 2 days after the accident was 2 workers slightly injured in a steam pipe rupture in Bhopal, India by Union Carbide, because that was the press release that Union Carbide put out, and that's what we believed because we had no other way to check. Okay, we had no other way to check. With the possible exception of MH370, we can discover anything within 6 seconds after it happens anywhere on the globe today. So if there is an explosion, if there is a bombing, if your company does something stupid, you will be found out in 6 seconds. That leads to transparency. The only thing you have when you screw up, not if you screw up, when you screw up, is to own it and get in front of it. When Obama ran for president, he ran, in 2008, he ran on a platform of transparency because he believed that the previous administration was not transparent, and he believed that he could win on that differential alone. He did. His first week in office, he appointed Tom Daschle, anyone remember this, for Secretary of the Interior. Daschle had stepped down even before the appointment. He had a nanny gate issue. Obama was scheduled to do the Sunday talk shows. Like every